Hello guys, time for miniatures once again. One of the most charismatic chess players in the history of chess was Mikhail. Mikhail was world champion. If I'm not wrong, he was shortest world champion, but for sure he was one of the most attractive players of all times. I just want to show you his game where he had white pieces. That game was played in the Russian Championship many years ago, and he played against a modern defense. So check it out. You're gonna like very much the following game, and the point of the following game is how actually important is when you have like the full activity of your pieces and come up with initiative. So let's go. Tal was white, he went for e4 and his opponent went for g6. g6 is nothing else but modern variation or modern opening. Usually it's done by some experienced guys or guys who would like to confuse you by playing some non-theoretical variations or just a little bit to go off-road openings. So after like g6, you go for d4, full center of course, and always knight c3. This is what I teach my students. You always go with the knight on c3. This is an ideal setup of your pieces against the modern defense. And now, black can go for so many options. c5, in which case you can take or push d5. c6, which is kind of mix between the modern and Caro-Kann, but his opponent went for the main line with a d6. Amongst many variations, Tal went for knight f3. But I just like to remind you that here on the channel, I gave you bishop e3 in one of the videos, so you can find it. Or you can find f4, which is called Austrian attack. And you can also find that, I believe, on the Chessable channel, where you actually have like the complete video and survey how should you trade this variation for white. After like knight c3, d6, Mikhail went for the very logical opening with the knight on f3. Usually and nowadays, that's not anymore like a popular variation for white. It's absolutely normal and one of the most logical developing moves. But at the same time, you just have to keep in mind that nowadays players like to go for something more modern like bishop e3 or f4 or even h4. This h4 became like crazy popular lately. Black went for c6. And black went for c6 for a couple of reasons. First of all, it kind of prevents bishop c4 because of b5 and b4 at some point advancing and getting some space on the queen side. Second thing, that c6 in some variations, if you play bishop c4, can break with d5. And finally, in some variations, they can just go with either queen b6 or queen a5. Mikhail went for bishop g5. He just goes with a nice developing move. And by the way, keep in mind, the main point of today's miniature is good activity of your pieces and nice development all together that lead to actual initiative. So after bishop g5, his opponent went with the queen b6. You're gonna find in so many games of yours move like this. Queen b6 is something very popular on all kinds of levels, starting from complete patzers to, like strongish GMs. And you never know if you should be going with the pawn sack or not. I just want to show you like one standard way of refuting this queen b6 for weaker guys. So you can always play a3. Looks like, what the hell? I just played queen b6 to take on b2 and my opponent plays stupid a3. What is this guy doing? And when they play like this, da-da-da-da, knight a4, and you trap the queen, guys. Believe it or not, by the way, you can hear my daughter's bird. I apologize. So you just play knight a4 and you win the queen. So on your question, but Maya, what was the point? Why did we play knight a4? A3. Because after queen b2, knight a4, they cannot put the queen on a3. That's why you played a3 and took the a3 square by pawn, so they can't play that. In the game was queen d2. And when he went for queen d2, Mikhail was famous for his sacrifices. In this case, he just sacrificed the pawn for what? For initiative. I just had the, like some unofficial lesson with my son, and I was explaining him how important is to sack this pawn on b2. Not in this game, in something completely different, but the idea is just the same. So you sack the pawn on b2 in order to get rook b1 with tempo, in order to get one more move with tempo. So what's the point here? Mikhail already had like 4 minor pieces well developed. He had an open b file. This queen on a3 was, like harassed with pretty good activity for white, and queen stands on d2. All he has to do in this position is just to make castle short, and that's it. And that's it. He's got an amazing game. Black went for queen a5. Guys, I just have to stop for a moment and to ask you once again. Black went for queen b6. Then he went for queen b2. After rook b1 went for queen a3. And now, in order to do something a little bit safer, he went with a queen on a5. Out of first 8 moves, 4 times he's just played with the queen. It's crazy bad. So you should always avoid these kinds of things in your games. And I mean, if your side who's tempted to take the pawn, don't do it. Better develop your pieces. Better develop your pieces than going like a greedy person for that miserable pawn on b2 and afterwards, like regretting your options. So here he went for queen a5 and short castle. Ideal position for white, and I just need to once again stop and to say, look at this. 4 minor pieces developed. Queen on d2, back rank connected with the rooks. b1 file is controlled by the rook on b1, and all you have to do just place the rook on e1 and do ideal just development. Also, king is absolutely safe on g1. At the same time, your opponent is up a pawn. Okay. That's the price he had to pay for that. And another thing is after like queen a5, this queen can go back to c7, d8, or to do something like this. On top of all that, only piece that is developed is the bishop on g7. So the thing is, after like castles, you just go for e6. After like e6, at some point, he's willing to go with d5 and to fight against the bishop and the pawn on e4. He also wants to kick this bishop away from g5, because bishop on g5 does a great job. And he also would like at some point somehow to put this knight either on e7. I don't want to say on f6, because you're going to face that with e5. Mikhail develops his last piece. Once again, maybe, you're going to find it kind of boring, but I just need to constantly keep telling you these kinds of things. Activity of your pieces. Queen here, connected rooks, on open files, weak king, safe king, 4 minor pieces developed, and then all you have to do, when you develop your pieces like this, and your opponent goes for a pawn, or you just blunder a pawn and then you somehow create a crazy strong initiative or attack, initiative goes by itself. So you don't need to be like Magnus Carlsen or Garry Kasparov yourself. It's going to be easy for playing. So take a look at this position. Black went for a6. This is a little bit crazy. Position is so difficult and he can do anything, but he now has to control like b5 square or just to do something with the pawn on a6 in order to play b5 or to do something else. Mikhail now decides to go with the bishop on f4 and to threatens the pawn on d6. And here, black has 2 options. To go with the queen on c7 or to go with his opponent played e5 in the game. e5 was in the game, and author of one book where I found this miniature said that this was a little bit riskier than the queen c7 itself. Queen c7 looks solid because no more, knight b5 or bishop b5 threats. But you know what? When you have everything, ideally developed, rooks on the open files, these minor pieces that do a great job, then you just have to definitely try something out, especially because the king is kind of exposed on e8. So here, e5. What's so strong about it? After d5, boom. And what's so strong about these bishop sacrifice? That's what you have to do in your games. If they take by pawn, you play e6, bishop threatens the queen, you play e6, open the rook, you want to take on e6, on f7, sorry, followed by knight g5, you're winning. After c takes d5, sack another piece. So just like you see, initiative plays itself, that's one thing, and another thing, you just have to now use and take advantage of all these active pieces in order to be able to simply benefit from, like having such a great attack and initiative. So after knight d5, e takes d5, e6. Completely winning position. Once I analyzed a game like this with a couple of my students, and I asked them, and most of them found bishop d5, c takes d5, and after knight d5, one student was right. Why do I have to capture? What if I defend myself by not capturing on d8? Now you're down a piece. Yes. But what do we have? We have tempo move. That's very important when you run attack or create initiative. Then you go with d5, breaking in the center and trying to open up everything in your position. And when this guy captures, bishop g5 pinning this, and after knight e7, captures, cannot take by queen because of knight c8. So king takes here, knight d5, king e8, rook bd1, so you can't play castle because of knight f6 or just queen e3 or stuff like that. And after like knight c6, just queen f4, he can't castle because of knight f6. Even if he plays anything else, knight f6 is coming and white is just completely winning. So Tal's opponent went for e5. Tal captures on e5 and brings the queen right into the center of the board. This is a beautiful move, one of the most beautiful moves in this series of miniatures that we've done so far. I like it so much because he sacrificed the pawn, and now he sacrifices bishop on f4. What's so special about this one? Well, the special thing is that you now can join with a knight, because you threaten knight c7 almost mate, or the queen is fallen. And if he takes, now you actually take advantage of the rook on open file against the exposed king. So you see how these positions play themselves. After queen d6, this guy went for queen c3. Keep in mind, he sacrificed one pawn. Then he sacrificed bishop on f4. And on top of all that, he sacrifices knight. That's why Tal was so charismatic in his games. And, there is a famous saying, there are like two kinds of sacrifices, good ones and Mikhail Tal's ones. So basically, afterwards, they used to find the refutations, but during the games, no one could find an easy refutation against his stuff. In this game, he sacrificed the knight, and on top of all that, he actually plays rook e to d1. That's what makes this game being so strong, because he now found an amazing move that is not forced. He threatens mate in 1 on d8, but he actually does something else. He, first of all, joins with one more piece into the attack, made a correct assessment that this guy is not going to take on f4. And by the way, he doesn't need it anymore on e1 because there is no more knight e5 piece sack, and he threatens mate. This guy plays knight e7. Mikhail Tal sacrifices another piece. Fantastic thing, and look how this game ended. Only 16 moves after king f7. By the way, don't forget, black was GM Tringov. So after knight g5, king e8, plays queen e6. In the game was knight e7. He came up with check and mated the king on d8. In the case of queen e6, king d8, he would just give check and deliver this kind of checkmate. Beautiful miniature made by Mikhail Tal. Sacrificed first pawn for the initiative, afterwards sacrificed 2 more pieces. And what's the point? The point is all you can do in your games, sacrifice for the activity of your pieces, and afterwards tactics is gonna show up, like by itself, and you don't have to chase the chance and look for the chance at all costs. It's gonna happen just like that. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to see most of you tomorrow in the first group Kings Indians session. All the best, and thanks so much. Bye-bye.